Diolch, Dir Prwy Lywydd. I'd like to make three fairly simple points about the situation we currently have in Wales. Firstly, is how the Barnett formula is funded on an annual basis. It makes it very difficult to plan for the long term. How often have we heard anxiety from constituents, from organisations, from people who rely on yearly grants? I've heard from people in multiple industries across charities and small businesses who wish that the Welsh Government funding could work on a more long-term basis, so that it can be relied upon, so that it can write a real growth strategy, rather than being faced with uncertainty year upon year. Secondly, as we know, as Mike has mentioned, the Barnett formula is not based on need. Now, we all know that a new formula wouldn't satisfy everyone, of course, but the current formula is certainly unsatisfactory. We are all aware that Wales has its own demographic. We are on average older, as Mabon said, and sicker than England, and there are historic reasons for this. However, the Barnett formula, particularly with regards to health, means we are not addressing the specific Welsh need. Rather, the formula assumes we are some sort of an average of whatever is happening in England. Funding is linked to specific changes in public spending in England and is fundamentally responsive to English need, what's happening in England, rather than Welsh need. We need to be funding based on the needs of the people of Wales. This needs-based allocation of health funding is what actually is happening in England. Their health boards serving those with higher needs are given more funding. Just this morning, it was reported that this needs-based funding in England will be strengthened by the UK government. Wes Streeting has announced today that £2.2 billion in NHS funding will be diverted towards the coastal towns and deprived areas in England. Oh, sorry, Mike, towards the poorest places that have the worst health. The UK government continues to acknowledge health spending should be based on need, but that philosophy will not be applied to Wales because of how the Barnett formula works. Instead, Wales, which is the poorest of the four nations and the sickest, is treated like an average of England. The health of the nation has a knock-on effect on every other part of the country. As Mab has already said, housing, productivity, education. If we want a prosperous future for Wales, we need funding that is responsive to the needs of Wales in the present. And finally, I want to talk about borrowing, and I'm glad to see the Conservative motion. I don't often say those words, and I don't often say those words. I agreed entirely with Sam Rowlands today. This isn't just about the Barnett formula. It's part of the fiscal framework between Wales and the United Kingdom. I'd be pleased to support the Conservative amendment today. Being able to borrow and spend is fundamental to building a prosperous future for Wales. This economic fact is acknowledged by the UK Chancellor, the Labour Rachel Reeves, Heaven David, whose own fiscal rules have made borrowing for capital spending much easier. But this ability to invest in the future has not been passed on to the Welsh Government. In fact, Wales has the lowest borrowing powers of the nations of the United Kingdom. If we looked at capital borrowing in other devolved nations, Scotland has an annual capital borrowing limit of 450 million, 3 times that of Wales' 150 million, despite being only 2.5 times the size of Wales. In terms of a total borrowing limit, both Scotland and Northern Ireland can borrow a total of 3 billion, where Wales' borrowing limit is 1 billion. County councils, proportional to the population they represent, also have more borrowing powers than the Welsh Government. Put together, the councils of Cardiff and Swansea, the 2 biggest cities in Wales, have currently borrowed and invested more than £1 billion. It makes no sense to me that this is more than the entirety of the Welsh Government is allowed to borrow for capital investment. As I've said before, Wales is proportionally poorer than the rest of the UK. A fair response to this fact, in my mind, would be to invest more in Wales, not less. To conclude, it's not just the Barnett formula that is limiting Wales's future. There are issues across the fiscal framework This just compounds historic inequality in the way Wales has been treated. And I finish on this point. I know, and it's good to see support across the chamber and within Welsh Government for change. Hopefully, this chamber can unite today and support the motion and support the amendment. Diolch yn fawr.